All right, NFL free agency is less than a week away. One national writer says Lions can make a splash. One local writer says no.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, here we go, everybody. It is a Tuesday edition of Locked On Lions, Locked On Podcast Network, the number one sports podcast network. Matt Dery and you on this Tuesday, March 3rd into Wednesday, March 4th. Yes, we are inching closer. We are inching closer to free agency to next Monday at noon. Whee! Welcome in, everybody. We are brought to you today by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. Dave Birkett out there saying, don't expect a big splash. Albert Breer not ruling out Lions and Tyler Linderbaum. We'll dive into that momentarily. Jeff Risdon, yes, the great Jeff Risdon, who covers the Lions, used to be at Lions Wire, now is at Detroit Lions Podcast, DetroitLionsPodcast.com. He's going to join us momentarily. Jeff was in Indianapolis, and we'll get his thoughts on the combine and some players that he saw there that could be Lion fits. I got to say this before we start. It's free for a month right here, right now, to join our Locked On Lions Everydayer Club. Are you sick of being on Facebook or YouTube comments? You want to come in and join us on our chat, on our Discord server? It is free. Free agency is here. So are we. Get 1 month free of the Everydayer Club with code free agency, no spaces, now through March 15th. Go ad free. Keep the conversation going on the Discord server, little chat room. I'm on there. Steve Facine is on there. Triple J, Double J is on there. Chris Druin's on there. Let's go. Join the club at lockedonlions.supercast.com. Let's do the business. If you don't like it for a month, you can quit. Come on. Join us. We'll talk to you there. All right. Wild reports circulating here on a Tuesday. No, nobody's been cut yet. No, nobody's been traded yet as I record here at 5:40 on Tuesday. We talked yesterday about David Montgomery and Graham Glasgow. But interesting reports today. First one from Dave Birkett, Freep.com, and the Free Press. We love Dave. Dave has done a great job for years covering this team. Birkett writes today in the Free Press, quote, multiple agents who met with the Lions at the NFL Combine do not expect the team to be major players in free agency. Womp, womp. And one who spoke with the team believes they will move Tate Ratledge to center and open competition at the guard spots, end quote. Look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you and lie to you and tell you that I'm not a little disappointed. I also don't think the Lions are going to spend $20 to $25 million on a center. All right. Linderbaum would be awesome. It would be so cool to see the Lions go, you know what? We had Frank Ragnow. We were lousy last year at the center position, and we are fixing it with a big time financial commitment. And I get it. That's not what the Lions do. But man, Tyler Linderbaum would be great. And I know it's a pipe dream. Now, Albert Breer at SI says, not so fast. He could see the Lions being in the mix for Linderbaum. We'll have to ask Jeff Risdon about that too. Here's another thing that's interesting. First of all, I want to see the Lions build an offensive line. I don't want to do the competition routine again. And I get it. All right. Christian Mahogany is not some lock, stock, and barrel left guard. Stamp it right now. Tate Ratledge was drafted in the second round, did a decent job last year. Who knows if he's a guard or a center? We don't know. Taylor Decker's likely on his last legs here and is playing one more season at left tackle. You know you have a stud at right tackle, and I have no idea who's playing center. Birkett says, hey, he's hearing the Lions are moving Ratledge to center, and hey, let's play that competition card at right guard. I don't like that. All right, we saw last year what a shaky offensive line looks like. Go get somebody. Again, Lions could use a draft pick at 17 on a lineman. That's possible. They also need to make sure they have some insurance at tackle as well. I am hopeful to see some movement coming up early next week with the Lions adding a starter out on the offensive line. Not a, well, we're moving Ratledge over and let's have Scruggs and Frazier and you know, Jody Batdorf. You know, Jody's my guy. Grand Blank's own, Turner's dad, P1 listener, everydayer. I don't want to play the competition game. I want to go get a good player. The Bears just lost Drew Dolman today. How about that? What is Ben Johnson doing to his centers? That's two Ben Johnson centers that retire unexpectedly. Frank Ragnow and now 27-year-old Drew Dolman, Pro Bowler at center this year for the Bears. Touchdown Bears. The Hammond Bears. The Gary Bears. The Arlington Heights Bears. Drew Dolman retiring. He just signed a 3-year, $42 million deal before last season to come to Chicago at a really good year, made the Pro Bowl, and now out, retired at 27. Wow, that's crazy. So the Bears are looking for a center. They already brought in Tyler Biadasz from the Commanders because he got released, so he's free to sign wherever he wants. For a look. The Bears interviewed him and had him in today. So I don't know. Who do I believe? You know, Albert Breer is a really good reporter. I think he's throwing darts here. If Burkett's talking to agents and they're talking to the Lions and the feel is that Detroit's just not going to be a big spender, we'll have to wait and see. Lions have some restructuring to do this week with contracts like Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown, Penei Sewell, etc. And I get it too. Lions also have to start thinking about extending Brian Branch, Jack Campbell, Jahmyr Gibbs. You can't let all your running backs walk. And Sam Laporta too. So we'll see about that. All right. Jeff Risdon from Detroit Lions podcast going to join us next. We will do the business with Jeffrey in a moment. And it is tax season, everybody. Locked On Lions today, brought to you by our friends at TurboTax. It's tax time for a lot of us. The old way of doing taxes is a lot. Trying to book an appointment that's not the most convenient, sitting in a waiting room with a stack of papers, emailing back and forth and wondering if they really got your situation. Well, this year, you're getting a major upgrade. Intuit TurboTax now has in-person locations nationwide. You can meet face-to-face with a real tax expert, and your documents get uploaded straight to your TurboTax app on the spot. Just like that, you're done. Your TurboTax expert works to get you every dollar you deserve while you get real-time notifications as you go about your day. It's the relief of walking in and meeting a real person and walking out knowing your taxes are being handled right. Head to TurboTax.com/local to find a store near you and book your appointment. And today's show also brought to you by Indeed sponsored jobs, workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill sitting open, still open. When the pressure's on, you need the right hire. This is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed sponsored jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for, skills, experience, and location, so you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. But if you're hiring, spend less time searching, more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. All right. Listeners of this show, Locked On Lions, are going to get $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now. Support our show by saying you heard about Indeed right here on Locked On Lions. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. All right, here he is as promised, no longer writing for the Lions Wire, but now Detroit Lions Podcast, DetroitLionsPodcast.com. Jeff Risdon is with us. Great to have you back, my friend. How you been?
Good to be with you. Thanks for having me on. It's been too long, man.
I know, my man. Good to see you. Checking out all your stuff as always. Indianapolis, I want to get to the combine. First, I need your reaction, though. Dave Birkett kind of reporting today in his article in the Free Press that he talked to a bunch of NFL scouts and a bunch of GMs and some agents, and a lot are saying that they don't think the Lions are going to veer from their normal offseason activity and free agency and not be big players again. What's your reaction to that?
I think that's very much the truth. That's sort of what we've heard. And that's, by the way, that's not just the Lions. This is not a great year for free agency. If you're trying to break the bank, it's not going to be a fun time for the agents that are trying to shop these guys. But especially for Detroit, the focus is on retaining your own guys, and they need all the money that they can get because they still have to sign Sam Laporta and Brian Branch and Jahmyr Gibbs and other people coming up too. Jack Campbell certainly vaults to the top of that list as well. They've got a lot of it's a fun problem to have, but it is a bit of a problem in that when you're retaining your own and paying all those premium contracts to your own guys, you can't bring in guys from the outside, at least not the top shelf guys. You're going to be shopping, instead of going to Nordstrom, you're going to the dollar store next to the Nordstrom rack. That's sort of the way that the Lions have to approach free agency now.
You just mentioned retaining your own guys, and obviously that core four that Brad Holmes talked about at the Combine, and I know you were there, but as far as the guys that you think they need to retain on the current roster, guys that are unrestricted of their own, who are the top two or three that you want to see back?
I want to see one of Amik and Rocky Sin back, just for cornerback depth purposes. I thought they both did their roles fairly well. I think Amik wasn't his best year. But I think he can bounce back from that pretty well. He's a solid clubhouse guy. And I thought the way Rock played late, especially when they started playing more zone, I thought he became a much better asset. So I would love to have that so you don't have to worry about, your number 3, number 4 cornerback spot. I would like that a lot. One of the offensive linemen, whether it's Coyote Alshika, Michael Neese, who I think is restricted, you've got there's a lot of movement on that offensive line, but with Dan Skipper retiring, you need somebody to come back to give some sense of continuity. And then I wouldn't hate it if Khalif Raymond came back as a number 4 wide receiver and punt returner, but they did draft Dominic Lovett a year ago to fill that exact same role. They feel good about that. I'm good enough with letting Leaf go, but Leaf's not going to be easy to replace because he can do things that we haven't seen Dominic Lovett or really anybody else on the roster do yet in terms of running back kicks, covering kicks. He's also good at that. And just getting open and being the size of a slot receiver, but playing an outside receiver's game, that's more difficult than to defend than it might sound on the surface. And so I wouldn't mind if he was back, but the price has to be right there.
Jeff Risdon with us, Detroit Lions Podcast. DetroitLionsPodcast.com covers the Lions, and it was in Indianapolis. We're going to talk Combine in a second. I saw yesterday on Twitter you did like the haul that they got back from David Montgomery, and I mentioned this yesterday. I get the sentimental value that he brought, and everybody liked him, loved him, to be honest. But number one, he didn't want to be here. Number 2, to get a 4 and a 7 and a possible serviceable backup offensive lineman, not a bad haul, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And as you know, I used to cover the Texans, so I know the other side of that trade pretty well too. They kind of screwed over Juice Scruggs a little bit. He was set to be their starting center in 2025. They found a free agent that their coaching staff liked better, and their GM, Nick Caserio, who came from New England. New England lost their center. They brought him down to Houston, put him into the starting lineup. He was terrible. And Scruggs sort of got lost in the shuffle. He wasn't a very good guard. So I hope the Lions see him as a center prospect. And I've talked to several people that cover the Texans. They're like, don't depend on him to start. But if you get it right and he clicks with Hank Fraley, the offensive line coach, you might have something there. And he adds to the competition with Seth McLaughlin is in. That's a guy that I liked a lot in the draft last year who missed his rookie season because he was hurt. You do have some options. You have the ability to move Tate Ratledge from right guard to center. I know not many people are keen on that, but Brad Holmes opened that door at the Combine as well. So they're morphing into what offensive line competition, and hopefully it's one of the cases where the best man wins, and it's not like this guy's the least bad, so we put him at the starting lineup like we used to do.
Yeah, and the thing with Ratledge, and I know Dave touched on it too in his piece today, was that a lot of these agents think they're going to try that move. They tried it last year early in camp, and very difficult for a rookie to just pick up that spot. What's interesting today, and I mentioned this before you came on, Bears lose Drew Dahlman to a crazy, hey, I'm 27 and I'm going to pull a Frank Ragnow and retire. He did a lot earlier than Frank did, but now you got a hole in Chicago for center. The Lions have that hole too. Just makes this offseason even more intriguing. But do you think they go and find a right guard, or do you think they go and find a center and Ratledge stays where he is?
Well, it's going to be cheaper to find a guard than it is to find a center, especially with the top end center like Tyler Linderbaum. He's a pipe dream for Lions fans, unfortunately, and he does have his faults. I think he's being a little bit too lionized, using that word not in the Detroit way, but good, definitely a good player. But if you're looking at that second tier, Connor McGovern, Cade Mays, there's some guys out there, but it's also a good center draft. So I think they're going to look at getting a guard in. And aside from the fact that, Tate Ratledge and Christian Mahogany are there, and one of them might move to center. Well, Ratledge might move to center. Christian Mahogany shouldn't be counted on to get that starting job without competing for it. So I don't think he was as good as he needed to be last year. Now, I like him a lot. I like Christian Mahogany a ton. I love his upside, but he's got to play better. He's got to show more this year. You can't just give him that job. Miles Frazier's out there. Who knows what the Lions think of him? Missed most of his rookie season. That's the guy who was best positioned in college was left tackle. I wonder what's going to happen with him. We have the Lions have never really answered that one either. So there are so many options up front that if they're signing a free agent interior offensive lineman, kind of takes them out of the mix for drafting one, at least in the early rounds, because you do have so many guys that are young that are in that mix. And then you can focus on an offensive tackle because you've got to get Taylor Decker's eventual replacement. You've got to get that in this draft because he's not in free agency. And this tackle draft is pretty good. At least I think it is.
Jeff, you just made a point about drafting a center, which is possible. You were in Indianapolis. I know you weren't there for the O-lineman, but a lot of people are saying, oh, Jake Slaughter, he's the next Ragnow. He's talking about Ragnow. He is, he seemed like a lion. There's always 4 or 5 guys at the combine, right, that you walk away and you go, that's a Dan Campbell type guy. Slaughter's one of them, is he not?
Oh, absolutely. His personality definitely exudes that. I'm not the biggest fan of his game. He's a guy that has trouble staying sustained with his blocks, and that seems kind of important. It's weird to me, and this is just a general statement about college football in general, but Florida fans hated their offensive line all of last year, and everybody seems to want Austin Barber, who was their left tackle, and Jake Slaughter, who was their center, and neither of them are coming off necessarily great college years, so that's something to back with. But if you can get him in the 4th or 5th round, Jake Slaughter's fine. But there are quite a few options in that middle round range. Jagger Burton from Kentucky is a personal favorite. I like him a lot. If you can, go a little bit deeper, one of Michigan State's guys, Matt Galvin, not a bad prospect. Took the center pretty well for the Spartans after playing both guard spots at Wake Forest. Another option. So there are plenty of options. It's figuring out which one the Lions want the best. And kind of which guy can get up to speed the quickest if they're drafting a center. Because if you're drafting a center this year, he's going to need to play center. And if you're taking him in the 4th or 5th round, that's probably a stretch to ask him to start. But, again, they have a lot of options. They just have to figure out their path.
The other one that I know stood out in terms of, he sounds like a lion, looks like a lion. This is how he plays is Blake Miller, another offensive lineman, obviously a tackle. What do you think of him?
I like Blake Miller a lot. He's a player that he really improved at what he needed to improve at in his last season. 4-year starter at Clemson, started as a true freshman in game 1. Nobody had done that starting the first week as a freshman all the way through for 4 years since World War II at Clemson. That says something. And he got so much better at identifying his targets to his outside shoulder, at strengthening his inside shoulder, and at hitting targets and destroying targets in space. He never used to be all that good at that. So I really like his rise. A lot of draft picks have come around on him because he was a guy that was, going into the season was like, well, maybe late day 3, but if he keeps playing okay, like he's a functional guy that you can bring in as a backup. Now he's got the potential to be a starting offensive lineman right away, and I like him a lot, and the Lions would have to take him at 17, and they could do worse at 17 than Blake Miller.
Let's talk about 17. We're going to do that next with Jeff Risdon, Detroit Lions podcast. We will do that next right here on a Tuesday edition of Locked On Lions. And Locked On Lions today brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. College basketball in high gear right now. Big games, tight spreads. We got conference tournaments coming up. Momentum swings every single night. From early tip-offs to late-night West Coast shootouts, always action on the board. And now, our friends at FanDuel are giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. That's right. You can build any college hoops parlay you want, rivalry games, ranked matchups, whatever fits your read. And then you just mix in spreads, totals, player props to match how you see the slate playing out that night. Then you can apply the profit boost and instantly bump up the potential payout. All right, look at the odds. Even this weekend, you want to put a little money down on Michigan State, you can do so, and do so with a parlay. Go safe, go bold, ride with the team that you've been following all season. It's your parlay, your style now with more upside behind it. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game. Back with our buddy Jeff Risdon, does a great job covering the Lions, Detroit Lions podcast, DetroitLionsPodcast.com. Jeff, it's been interesting looking at all the mocks and seeing a lot of different names at 17. Look, they're mock drafts, but what do you think Brad Holmes is thinking about right now at 17? Is it a move up? Because there is a little bit of a dip from a player value spot around 8 or 9. How do you see 17 playing out down at 222?
I'll tell you, I don't think they're going to move up. And one of the reasons is, and this was something that was talked about a lot throughout Indianapolis, the 2027 draft is perceived as much stronger than the 2026 draft. So if you want to move up, you're going to trade picks next year. And I know there's the every year the next year is better. Well, that hasn't been true in like 4 of the last 6 years. And this is one of them where like last year's draft was better than this year. So if they want to move up, like they're going to be costing themselves a lot more than it would normally think. So I think they're going to stand pat. If they can trade back, if there's somebody that wants to come up and grab a player, I have to think that Brad Holmes would have no problem in sliding back to 20, 25 and picking from the same basic player pool or level of player that you're going to get, whether it's an offensive tackle, defensive end, safety, cornerback. I think those are the general positions that they're going to be looking at. But yeah, it's if they're at 17, they're going to get a good player. They might not get a guy who's going to live in Pro Bowls, but they might get a guy like Taylor Decker, who was picked, I believe, at 18, who made a couple of Pro Bowls in his career, but was a good starter, above average starter for most of his career. Then that's the caliber of player that I think you're looking at getting here.
What stood out in Indy for you in terms of, and I know we talked a little about O-linemen, so you can dip your toe in whatever pool you want here, but what takeaways did you get? And did you get a sense at all of maybe what the Lions were looking for?
I'd love to answer that last one as yes, but I don't want to lie about it. They're certainly looking at offensive linemen. Yeah, they are looking at offensive linemen throughout the draft. I don't think that's any secret. I know that they have spent a lot of time scouting Keldrick Falk from Auburn, and boy, he fits exactly what they want at edge. He's long, he's strong, he's young, he can crush the can, he plays the run very well on the way to the pass. So the problem is he doesn't have a lot of college production, and he's not the most explosive athlete either, although he does have really nice feet, which is kind of an odd combination. So he's certainly in the mix. I think a guy like TJ Parker, who I know had a formal interview with the Lions down in Indianapolis, Clemson. I thought he did a fantastic job of explaining away why his production dropped from 2024 to 2025. And if you go back to the mock drafts last summer, he was the number 1 pick in a lot of them. So this is good damage control on him, good athlete. He's a little bit smaller than what the Lions have liked, but he fits the mold. Very mature guy, too. I can see them liking him. As far as like overall draft, my God, the tight end class. Wow. Athletic, versatile. Lions happen to need a tight end, maybe 2. You don't have to get one early. I think Kenny and Sadiq will probably be gone by 17. You don't need to take your second round pick, but there are guys on day 2, late day 2, day 3 that can really play. And the safety class is the same way. Dylan Tiedemann, my God, he might be the most athletic white guy ever at the combine. Certainly showed out enough that you can use him at 17 if you want to get him, the safety who started at Purdue and wound up at Oregon. Lions have a need at safety, no doubt about it. Whether Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph both come back or not, it's still, you can make, this is my pipe dream. Instead of playing 3 linebackers all the time, play 3 safeties and have one of those safeties hybrid as a linebacker the way Seattle does, the way Baltimore does, the way Pittsburgh does, the way Houston does. But let's join the modern era, and you can play 3 premium safeties in this league now. That's where the league is at. I would love to see that. He certainly fits, but they're day 2, day 3 guys to fill that depth chart out while Kirby and Branch are both injured and have, I guess, long-term questions with Kirby. Good year to need a safety, good year to need a tight end, and the Lions happen to need both. So I think that the needs align with what an offensive. It's a good offensive line draft. It's not particularly good at wide receiver. The Lions don't need a wide receiver. Their top 3 are back. They do need a running back now, but not early. Good day 3 running back class. I like the way that the Lions have set it up where what they need in 2026 aligns with where the strengths of the draft are in 26, because it hasn't been that way all the time with Detroit. Last year was a pretty good example then, quite honestly.
Could you see a scenario because of the Terrion Arnold situation? And obviously there's been no charges. He's not been arrested, obviously named, but could you see a scenario where the card is up there at 17 and a name like Avion Terrell goes to Detroit, a corner at 7? Look, let's be honest, Jeff, and you and I have talked before. Doesn't matter who the GM is. First round corners just have not done all that well here. No. Ryan Westbrook, Terry Fair, the list goes on.
Oh, yeah.
But like, could you see that scenario maybe possibly being there at 17?
You certainly can't rule it out. I don't think that that's what they're going to do. But again, Avion Terrell can play, man. And he had a good combine. He came in faster and bigger than expected. That's a nice little bump for him. He certainly fits in that 17 overall range. I like Mansour Delane from LSU as well. I think Lions fans would not like him because he's not fast. But and when have they cared what we think, what the fans think about it? It would be surprising but not shocking to see them turn in a card with a cornerback on it. Let's put it that way.
And they've accumulated some picks here, obviously, with the Montgomery trade, and they could possibly be getting another compensatory pick. You just wonder what Brad Holmes has up his sleeve. And we know that he loves linemen, and obviously you're going to have Aleem McNeil and Tyleik Williams back, but what about an interior D lineman at 17? Is that a possibility, you think?
That seems, apart from the fact that it does seem far-fetched because they just invested a first-round pick in Tyleik Williams, it's also not a great top of the defensive tackle class. I think Peter Woods will probably be gone by then. He doesn't play the run particularly well anyways. I don't think that the Lions are going to have a lot of interest in Caleb Banks because his run defense is god-awful. I saw a thing on X this week. He is the worst graded run defender from PFF and has the most run blocking losses of any defensive tackle since at least 2015. So I don't think that he's really going to be in the cards for the Lions. And that's, quite frankly, your first-round defensive tackle class. So that's just not a marriage there. But there's some guys later. Lee Hunter, I don't think is going to go that high from Texas Tech. A good football player. Definitely fits the grit for the Lions. But, again, they just invested in Tyleik. I think Roy Lopez will be back, and I think he'll have a role. He showed at the end of the season that he can play, and God only knows what's going to happen with Levi Onwuzurike, but he is back under contract, and if he's healthy, that this organization has an unhealthy love for that dude, and hopefully he can reward some of that.
I was trying to avoid bringing up Levi or Josh Pascal with you, but
I know. Yeah.
My goodness gracious. That one day when that came out that they were back, just automatically, I was like, all right, that's a topic I did not expect to do, but hey, that's the beauty of this league, and it's a wild time. So who knows? All right, Jeff, great to see you, brother. As always, appreciate the time, and we'll definitely talk sooner rather than later.
Sounds good. Go Lions, baby.
You got it. There he is, Jeff Risdon with us, Detroit Lions Podcast, DetroitLionsPodcast.com. Read him, listen to him. Also filling in all the time on the Huge Show as well on a Tuesday, Locked On Lions.